Welcome. Before I introduce Trenton Doyle Hancock, the fourth Contemporary Perspectives lecture this year, I would like to remind you that there will be a reception following the lecture upstairs in the entranceway in the foyer. It'll give you a chance to meet and speak with Trenton one-on-one if you're interested. I also wish to thank the Office of the Dean, especially Jean Connaughton, for their support in publicizing this event, the wonderful work-study staff at the School of Visual Arts who were tirelessly distributing posters all over Boston, and a special thanks to Lynn Cooney, exhibitions director, who makes everything work. Trenton Doyle Hancock was raised in Texas and received his MFA from the Tyler School of Art in Philadelphia. Trenton works in various mediums, from print and drawings to collaged felt paintings, incorporating bottle caps, spray can lids, mythical creatures, and tragic protagonists, balancing moral dilemmas with a vibrant sense of color. Contrary to many emerging artists who reinvent themselves every few years, Trenton has remained true to his complex cartoon style that is a narration of his own experiences. He has proclaimed his desire to rekindle his passion for the cartoon figures that he began judging from some early works when he was about 10. Before the age of 30, Trenton was featured in both the 2000 and 2002 Whitney Biennial, becoming one of the youngest artists in history to participate in this prestigious survey. This year, Trenton's exhibition, The Wayward Thinker, is on view in Edinburgh, Scotland, and then will travel to the Boymans Museum in Rotterdam. He has had one-person exhibitions at the Contemporary Art Museum Houston, the Modern Art Museum of Fort Worth, and the Museum of Contemporary Art North Miami. He is in the collection of the Museum of Modern Art, the Brooklyn Museum, the Whitney Museum of American Art, and the Studio Museum in Harlem, all in New York, as well as other major museums from Houston to New Orleans and beyond. Presently, he is represented by the James Cohen Gallery in New York. Please join me in welcoming Trenton Doyle Hancock.
Thank you, Lynn, for that introduction, and I also want to thank the School of BU for having me here. First, make sure I can work this. Okay. I guess I will start out by saying, first and foremost, my project is a painting project with heavy roots in drawing, but I also dip into sculptural things, the idea of bookmaking and performance. And hopefully throughout the duration of this lecture, I'll be able to elaborate on all of those modes of making and talk a little bit about how they tie into the whole of what I do. I'll also give you some background about sort of what my project consists of. There's nothing really linear about the way things happen for me, and nothing particularly linear about the way I guess images are formed. So it's hard to really pinpoint when, say, I started make this character came about at this particular point. Everything is sort of evolves in a way that, but I don't know, for the sake of these types of talks, I speak in absolutes, so forgive me for that. But I guess I'll start out by talking about the image that you see here, which is me in a Mound outfit. And the Mound is one of the characters that I created, and I became him for this performance, which was my first gallery show in Dallas, Texas. Well, for this show, when people came into the gallery, they were greeted by the image of me sleeping in this Mound outfit. And every 30 minutes, the gallery director would come into the main room, turn on the lights, and climb a ladder and feed me a bowl of Jell-O. And there was the assistant director was underneath the costume, blowing up balloons that corresponded to the color of Jell-O that I had just eaten. And it's a 2-hour performance, so there was 4 different feedings, and let's see. And Lisa would shoot the balloons out the butthole of the mound, and there was balloon shit all over the floor. And on the walls are plastic tops, not unlike the plastic top on this bottle of water. And I collect them, something I'd been doing since I was really young, and decided at some point, why not have these in the work? So around the same time as the whole character of the mound developed, I was also investigating what to do with these tops. So I glued them all over the wall, or Velcroed them on the wall, I should say. Here's an image of the outfit without me in it. And you can see the tops on the wall a little better. There was also paintings that went along with this show, and drawings, which I don't think I'm going to show any of those, but I just wanted to this is a good way for me to talk both about performance and sculpture at the same time. I see this piece as a sculpture in the sense it's residue of a performance, and those things become like they have meaning after they've been with me and through performance. But I guess in hindsight, when I look back, and I'll introduce you to more characters in just a minute, but I realized that I become my characters quite often, but only as needed. It's not something that I say, I'm going to become. It's not arbitrary. It's like it has to be a need for me to want to perform as these characters. And I now understand that I do this in a way to better understand the character. That way I don't feel like a fraud when I'm painting and drawing them. It's like, because these are aspects of myself, they're very real to me, and if I become them, then it makes sense. And these are the thoughts of a mound. They think and dream in colors. This is one of the first 2-dimensional mounds that I ever made. It's fur and fake fur, felt, and acrylic on paper collage. And that's relatively the same size that it is in real life. Okay. Is that working? Oh, there's 2 focuses. Jesus. Okay. Am I the only person that can focus? Is there another? Okay, no one else out there. Okay. It's me. So yeah, just yell if something's not looking right, and I'll do the best I can. This is a small graphite drawing of a mound who's taking a trip through his own body, and he's astounded at what he sees. And this piece is called "Wow, That's Me." And the impetus for making this piece was, I don't know if you guys remember, but the Wheel of Fortune back in the early 80s, every time you would win a round, your severed head would float through a room of goods, and you would pick what you wanted to keep. It was the strangest thing, and I wish they still did that. So I wanted to make a large painting based on that image. So this piece is also called Wow, That's Me, and it's by 6 by 9 feet. And but I didn't want to paint the Mounds' face this time. So to take his place are his words, which are cut out of the canvas and glued back in. This is essentially another large collage. So Wow, That's Me is flowing in and out of this these mound cells, which at that particular time I coined this kind of painting as mound meat because, well, it's the meat that's inside of a mound. And it also looks like the meeting of a lot of mounds. And that's a vegan. And I met my first vegan in graduate school. Coming from Texas, I was in grad school in Philadelphia. I mean, everyone eats meat down there, so I'd barely been introduced to vegetarianism, so veganism was a real extreme thing for me to try to understand. But I was sort of forced into a roommate situation with a husband and wife vegan, and I thought, oh, this is going to be really sort of fun, and I'm going to learn a lot about, life and animals and just being a good person. And it turned out to actually be the opposite of that. They were into high design, so all of their furniture was extremely uncomfortable. I mean, it was good for them, but I'd sit down and, just break my back, and they would make weird banana tofu shakes in the morning, which were quite tasty, but they would leave them out all day, and fruit flies would gather on them toward the middle of the day, and it was, and they were very preachy, and it was sort of a worst case scenario, and I didn't really know what to do, so the only thing I knew to do was to draw them and try to make sense out of it that way. And this piece was in my graduating show, which they came to, and needless to say, I've never seen them again. And this piece is called Salad, and that's what happens when a lot of vegans get together. It's called a salad. So this also gives you an idea, like you saw the mound, and then you saw the mound meat, and then you saw the vegan, and then you see the salad, and it's this idea of creating a module that I can replicate and form a field, or a new kind of a ground, or a new kind of a character. This is a good time to introduce you to that concept within my work. And also, the piece before this, the vegan, was basically a direct portrait of this guy I knew. But the more I drew these vegans, the more I stripped their humanity away, and the pallor of their skin became much more sickly, and they got shorter and had less hair, and now they're just like pale imitations of humans, like goblins that run around in the underworld. And here's me sitting at the dinner table having some salad. Okay, this is a drawing I did when I was around, 10 years old. And this is Torpedo Boy versus a bear. And, like most little boys, I was, into escaping, and creating these fantastic worlds. And this is Torpedo Boy. He's my alter ego. I was a very studious, geeky child, but I always wanted to be the jock. I wanted to be that kid that could beat everyone running, but that just was not me. But I could draw. I could, and I like to do it. And this is Torpedo Boy. Let's see what else. But then later on, when I'd say I was in grad school, I was really hurting for things to draw, and I wanted to have things that were my own. I didn't want to just be grabbing arbitrary icons out of the air and trying to make something of them. And I thought, wow, the younger version of me knew all of this stuff already. Like, no one needed to tell young Trent what to do. So luckily I saved all of my drawings from when I was young, and I went back and started sifting through them and rediscovered Torpedo Boy. But when I reintroduced him into the work, his character changed. He matured. He became more fallible. Like in the beginning, he was, the archetypal superhero. He never did anything wrong. But here we have Torpedo Boy kills shoplifters, so don't shoplift. It's like he's not aware of his own strength. He takes it too far. This piece is called Leave Salem. He's stepping on some poor guy. Okay. And now this is, I'm going to talk a little bit about drawing, and specifically wall drawing. When I put on shows, I'll have paintings and drawings and etchings or whatever up on the wall. But since it's all bound by this narrative, the forms spill out of a narration. I think I wanted to contextualize the paintings with the actual text. And this became sort of a form of concrete poetry for me, and gave me, I think, license or the freedom to create on the spot or respond to different kinds of architecture with drawing, and I guess be able to create a total environment in which the work is able to exist. Okay, and with all that said, I'm just going to start to tell you stories. This is Homer Buctus. Homer Buctus was an ape man, and he had an ape family. That's his son and daughter and his wife, whose name is Alma Croyne. And one day Homer Buctus went out into a field in order to collect food for his family, but he was greeted with something that was unexpected. It was a field of flowers so beautiful that he didn't know what to do with himself. So the only thing he could think to do was to pull out his manhood and masturbate. Let me go back. And the next day that he returned, he noticed that his seed had commingled with all of the flowers and created a hybrid creature. And these were the first mounds. And he came back each day and did the same thing, creating more mounds and more mounds. And this is a drawing in which I used to make this larger piece. And inside of it, oh boy, it's in sideways. Not cool. Okay. Well, that's a blow-up of that drawing, which has about 1,000 baby mounds in it, and they all have particular personalities. Some of them have heads, and some of them don't. And from that drawing, I decided to make a large painting. This piece is called Choir, and all of the baby mounds are speaking their first words, which are colors. And the surface of this is built up with fake fur and all kinds of collaged elements. And a lot of the words are cut out of the surface of the painting as well. And along with this body of work, I did 52 portraits of baby mounds. It's the number 52 came from, I named each mound and went through the alphabet twice to do the names, so that's where 52 came from. This guy's name is I See Things, which is a quote from one of my favorite movies, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. This is a small painting called We Love You, and I used this general motif to create this larger painting. I guess it's about 6 by 6 feet. And at one point in the story, the flowers speak to Homer Buctus. They say, Homer Buctus, we love you, and we want you to be a loving and caring father for all of your new mound babies. And I thought, that is a really ominous thing to hear, like thousands of flowers speaking to you at once in the same voice. It must be pretty eerie. So I wanted to make a painting that sort of spoke about that. So those words, we love you, are now becoming the pattern of the flowers. So it's at once sort of beautiful and lacy, but also has this ominous undertone to it. This is a watercolor mixed media piece. I did several of these drawings of the field of flowers, and I was lucky enough to work with a wallpaper maker, and we spliced together some of these patterns and came up with this unified wallpaper, which was placed on the wall, and the portraits of the baby mounds hung over the wallpaper. So there's this idea of place, but it also starts to reference something domestic, some idea of home. And then something happened along the way where a lot of the baby mounds were destroyed, but one of them lived very long, and I'll tell you a little story about him. Well, this is the forest. This is where Mounds ended up living. And these are Lloyd's words streaming through the forest. And Lloyd is a spirit energy who is like a father energy that looks over Mounds and is the father of Torpedo Boy. But he's also the giver of judgment and warnings. So these weird warnings that are beginning to happen are statements for a mound. So this is what he's seeing. And this is called Friends Indeed, and it's a painting that's about 6 by 9 feet. And then I took that idea of these words streaming through the forest and through the grass to its natural end. And this is called Remember with Memory. And the warning that Lloyd was trying to send to this mound is that vegans have made their way into the forest and are going to destroy you. So here's a small graphite drawing of vegans who are ripping a mound apart and collecting his mound meat in buckets. I made a large painting. This is around 8 by 8 feet, called The Legend is in Trouble. And it's, I wanted the making of this piece to sort of to bespeak the information inside the piece or the narrative. So it's very, the surface is very tormented. This is another mound meat. When I get bored, I'll just, focus on mound meat and make a mound meat painting. So you may see these come up from time to time. This is called a yank, a tug, and a yank. This is vegans do their dirtiest work. I forget the name of this one, but it's a study for this painting, which is, and the branches became as storm clouds. And you see vegans coming up from the bottom and raining down from the tree branches onto this mound, stabbing him with sharpened tofu tools. This is right before the fight before. And this is when Lloyd and the other spirit energy, which is called Painter, and Painter is the mothering energy that is the reason we can see colors within my paintings. They're both coming to fight over who gets to have mound number one's soul. And this is Painter and Lloyd's struggle for soul control. So the war is on. And here's the mound, bewildered. He doesn't know what's happening to him. He doesn't know that he's going to die. And this is called Toll. And that's Torpedo Boy, who's trying to make his way into the forest, but he has to pay a toll to get in. And this is Torpedo Boy tries his darndest to stop an oozing mound meat. And this is a collage as well, and it's 11 feet tall, sort of a monument to this mound who's dying. And I knew that I wanted to make a painting of Torpedo Boy trying to patch up this mound and keep the mound meat from spilling out, but I didn't want to paint it straightforwardly, or I thought, what if I could paint the energy of this happening? How would I do that? So I reduced Torpedo Boy down to these yellow arms and just replicated them in between these patches of mound meat, and it created this the idea, or this feeling that of this frantic feeling, this anxious kind of energy. This is the legend breathes his very first death breath. Yep, another mound meat. This is mound number one attempts to put out his own fire of life. And what is happening here is Torpedo Boy's efforts are obviously futile, and all of the mound meat that is spilled on the ground got really hot and started a fire. And as a defense mechanism, mounds shoot out cool streams of mound meat to put out the hot. But in this case, it acted as an accelerant and created a larger fire. Oh, another mound meat. Sorry. And here's the painting that's based on that drawing. This is the life and death of number one, or it's a study for another painting where it's over. So we see the dying half and then the remains. And this is called the life and death of number one, but I've highlighted the fade of one. But if you were to actually stand in front of the piece, you could see the other ghost letters and create the full phrase. But here we have the mound with the mound meat cascading off of his bones, forming a river. And another mound meat. This piece is called By and By, and as you can see there, the mound meat is gone, and what's left is the skeleton. And all of the animals of the forest and from the surrounding areas have come to pay their last respects to the great mound. And from that painting, I did a series of etchings, and this was a great opportunity to flesh out some of the animals and also itemize some of the other forms within that painting. And here we have the skeleton on its own. And Mr. Lion, he's giving his eulogy. Mr. Squirrel. The elephant. I don't know if it's an alligator or a crocodile. I think it's an alligator. Mr. Shark. He couldn't make it, but he can scream really loud, so they heard him. And of course the ostrich. And this was sort of the finale of that suite. Okay, can we switch the carousels? Okay. And now I'll tell you where Torpedo Boy actually was when he should have been saving mound number 1. This is a series of 10 drawings and 4 paintings based on the idea of my studio floor. My studio floor is very important to me in the sense that it yields all sorts of treasures that I put into my paintings. When you come into my studio, you might think that I'm a complete slob, which I may be, but I've learned how to navigate and, I guess, extract some sense of order and meaning out of these piles, or mounds, if you will, in my studio. And they always end up on the floor, and that's just the way that things are. So I wanted to do a series of work based on my studio floor. And what I did was I took the word studio floor and made anagrams. So I rearranged all of the letters and formed new phrases out of those 2 words. And what was revealed was about 100 different phrases, half of which directly related to my characters, which the word Lloyd came up, or the word tofu. And I thought, oh, what's going on? This is crazy cosmic stuff. So I kept going with it. So I took about 25 phrases and built a story around those phrases. So you'll read the story and all of a sudden come to something that's like broken English or nonsense. Well, that's those anagrams that have been plonked down right in the middle. But in essence, they came first, and the rest of the story grew around them. And from that came these images. So this gives you yet another idea of how images are generated for me. So here we have Torpedo Boy, who's made his way down to the underworld and is spotted a group of vegans who are having their sacred meal, a stack of tofu. And Torpedo Boy begins to antagonize them, taunting them and making fun of their food. He says, what does he say? Sorry, old tofu. And the leader at the table, the Dr. O Tofu Oils, which is an anagram, slams his bony fist down. This tofu rule. So Torpedo Boy swipes the tofu off of the table and starts to hold it hostage. And he's taunting them. I stole your food. I stole your food. And they're saying, still our food? And Torpedo Boy makes a promise to them. He says, if you guys quit advancing on me, I won't call my father Lloyd down here to deal with you. And that gets them to back off a little bit. And he promises to give them back their tofu. But he reneges on his promise and leaves the underworld. So this story sort of tells you a little bit about the fallibility, or how even though he's a hero, he has these qualities that are, I guess, more related to being a villain. And that's something I also like to explore within my work, is this idea that the truth is fleeting, or you always have to check out other perspectives to cross-check them with your own, because maybe what you think is the truth maybe is not the truth. So here we have the vegans, who are the good guys, essentially. They're just minding their own business. And Torpedo Boy, who's the hero, is the real bad guy. So Torpedo Boy ducks into an alleyway to count his tofu, and he spots out of the corner of his eye a beautiful young working girl named Trudy Fluso, and he offers her a block of tofu for her services. And she explains that she's into fur and tools, and Torpedo Boy interrupts her, and he's ready for a scatological experience. And she agrees when he offers her 2 blocks of tofu. She's cheap. Oh, another mound meat. Sorry. Okay, and they retreat to the USO Royd loft. And in the floor are actual bits of their conversation. Do slit number 4. Do it slow, or F you. I do for slut. All anagrams. It's crazy. And Torpedo Boy here has ended up with his photo in the newspaper. So Trudy got the best of him. And this is sort of a word game that's not an anagram, but you follow these letters around, and it spells Torpedo Boy in a world of shit. And along with those drawings, which are pretty straightforward illustration-y type things, I also made these abstractions, which were comprised of bits of scraps of other failed paintings that were in the piles in my studio on the floor. So I just spliced them all together and formed this other interpretation of my studio floor. And these are fairly large. I think the largest one being around 13 feet tall, and this one's like, 8 feet, I think. And so there was 4 of them. So I had, for the show, each week I had them rotate one off of the wall and put it back on the floor, because these paintings were made both on the floor and on the wall. So they act as rugs, as paintings. So I wanted them to have a life in both places. And on the wall, you can see that the text which corresponds to each drawing is written there. So this is one of the first times I investigated this idea of walking through a storybook. Okay, and this is Saint Sessom. And once upon a time, there was actually a vegan who wanted to be friends with Mounds. Like he didn't, and he wanted to be a good vegan. And he was interested in abundance when most vegans were only interested in being very reductive and keeping out all of the good stuff. Well, this vegan formed a bond with the character Painter and discovered color, and discovered that color was the only way that vegans could regain their humanity. So Saint Sessom wrangled up a band of like-minded vegans and formed a wayward-thinking cult called the Cult of Color. This is the Cult of Color around a cauldron of mound meat. This is just another interpretation of the same subject matter, a little bit more fleshed out. And as part of this show, I created a piece called Sessom's Chamber. And this is the place where Sessom went to sleep and would get these messages in his dreams from Painter. And it was also an opportunity for me to hang these, essentially like I showed before, the felt paintings with the scraps and things glued on them. I always got to see the backs of them, but most of the viewing public never get to see the backs of them. So I thought this was the perfect opportunity. And there were some nice things happening with the light coming from the skylight, hitting the pieces from the back, and evidence of what's on front coming through. So it was this nice dialogue between the front and back of the pieces. This is a 5 by 5 foot painting called Sessoms Mission, and outlined in this painting, all the words are actually carved out of the surface, is Painter's address to Sessom, outlining what he has to do in order to save vegan kind. Another mound meat. And this is Das Plimt, and it's Saint Sessom walking on a sea of mound meat. He's very talented. This is the Abysmal Dismal Baptismal. Well, what happened was when Sessom made his way into the forest to look for a mound to befriend, the mound gave him some mound meat in order for Sessom to use in his experiments. And what happens is vegans take hits of mound meat and see color. So it's sort of they're the first hippies. And as you can probably tell, I really didn't address it earlier. I have a background in cartooning. For several school newspapers, I drew cartoons, usually sometimes political cartoons, sometimes they weren't attached to any sort of article in the paper. They were just weird things that I thought were funny. But at the same time as doing that, I was also taking painting and other exploratory art classes. So at some point, I just wanted to merge painting together with this idea of cartooning and just see where it would take me. And so that's just another matrix that's happening under the project. This piece is called Cult Jam. And it's just a lot of vegans getting down and dirty and in a very orgiastic way, reveling in their discovery of color and not caring what anybody thinks about it. And these are a bunch of vegans sucking down mound meat and powering this machine, which colors are coming out of the top of. Here's a converted vegan. Another vegan convert. More of them. And this is a miracle machine. And miracle machines were created by one of the vegan scientists within the cult of color, and his name was Beto Wachau, and he was one of the smartest vegans that ever lived. He had 5 brains. And he came up with this idea that there could be machines made that you could shove mound meat into one end, and out the other end could come colors. And we could place these at different parts of the underworld and convert many vegans at once. So here we have one of the miracle machines, and you'll see lots of them. This piece is called Las Luces, Luces, and Losses. This is miracle machine number 9, or the furnace that burned together goodness. Another mound meat. This is a miracle machine, I think it's number 5, or the Deblin technique at work. This is miracle machine number 13, or good vegan. And you get a sort of a chance to see the inner workings of the miracle machine. It's very complex. This is miracle machine number 11, or musacrilege. This is miracle machine number 1, fountain. What's this one called? This is, well, it's a miracle machine. I forget his name. This is miracle machine number 6, the craft master. This is converted vegan sings the reds, the oranges, and the blues. This is the mutual decision. And these are small drawings on paper. Converted vegan group number 2. Another miracle machine. This is aborted but beautiful. And this drawing sort of leads to the next chapter in the Cult of Color saga, which is entitled "In the Blestian Room." And the Blestian Room is the place where all of those crazy color experiments happen, but it's also the place where there was dissension in the ranks, and dark things started to descend upon this faction. So essentially I see this leg of the story starting out very dark, and then color being introduced, and there being sort of a crescendo, or fireworks, if you will, and then all of that dies down, and the evil, or the reductive, begins to take over again. So things start to fade to black. But this is in the Blestian Room, a small drawing which I used to make this I think it's 8 by 10 foot painting, which is also in the Blestian room. And you can see that some of the things that are starting to happen don't seem healthy for the vegans, which this whole thing was supposed to be about restoring health and humanity, but somewhere along the way, the power of color is being misused. This is Brisk Bones Befallen, and at this point, you're going to start seeing less vegans' faces and more of their limbs emoting most of the feeling in the work, because they're trying to stay hidden, and it's not working. This is Bound. This is Morsel. Another miracle machine. This is Beacon. And from this small painting, I made this larger painting, which is about 8 by 10 feet. Another miracle machine. This is Give them an inch and they'll take a foot. A hand study. And that brings me back to Aborted but Beautiful, where you see these color eggs that these miracle machines have been shooting out, but these have been rendered useless. They've been aborted. But this motif I used to make this next painting. So we go back to this idea of taking a module and replicating it and creating a field. This is called The Third to the Last Big Hurrah. And this is essentially only a detail of it. For some reason, I don't have a full picture of it, but I have many details. I don't get it. But you can see these arms sticking in from all sides of the canvas, creating sort of a lattice work or a scaffolding or something. But it gives me like an opportunity to explore all of the different personalities that a hand can have, like different gestures, or maybe he has knuckles on top of knuckles, or you know, just how many different ways can I be inventive about these hands. Oh, there's Saint Sessom and F. Shine. He's one of the vegan disciples. Okay. I don't know. Okay. That's about as good as it'll get. This is the first couple of pages of a comic book that I did based on a performance where I became a vegan for 6 months. I really just wanted to see if I could survive it, and I did, and I learned a lot about myself. I learned that I really like meat, and I think I need it. But I also learned that if I had to not eat it for 6 months, I could do it, and I think I'd be okay. So this comic acted as the invite for the show in the Blestian room, and the bottom half of the comic, this frieze at the bottom, is sort of a diary about, my what happened to me along the way of this performance. And at the top is sort of just a regurgitation of some of the icons that I discovered throughout the process of making those paintings, like the arm and the hands and the buckets and the stalagmites. So there's basically two different movies playing at once. And on this page, I talk about my body or my mind trying to acclimate to this idea of not having meat. And the weirdest thing started to happen. I say the first 3 or 4 weeks, every night I had a dream that I was going into a pizza parlor and I would ask for a cheeseless pizza. And every time the guy would give me a pizza with cheese on it. And sometimes I would notice right when he gave it to me, and other times I had already taken a bite of it. You know, I would wake up sweating and just insane. Yeah. And there's a panel over there that talks about me being able to survive so long without meat because I store meat in my stomach, sort of like a camel stores water. This is the essence of veganism. And in the middle of this body of work, I did another series of etchings. This is called the Theossified, and ossification is a process of becoming bone-like, and theosophy is sort of a general term for religion, but in this case I use theosophy as specifically a religion based on color or the idea of color. So here's sesame. And these are all etching process. There's no hand coloring in them at all. This is the apostles. This is symphony. And we have a vegan sort of directing this weird choir to the right over there. The title of this is Within Each of Us Ofttimes There Dwells a Mighty and Raging Fury. And my favorite television show of all time is The Incredible Hulk from 1977. And right before the pilot aired, those words are displayed on white words on a black screen. And I just thought it was a really nice, beautiful statement. And it sort of spoke about this horror that's arising from this vegan who's smoking a bong of color. This is fountain. This is stone prone, and it's a vegan who's maybe he's had too much mound meat and is giving birth to these color eggs. And that's it.
Does anybody have any questions? Nobody? Yes? Let's see if I can reach you. When you take this, could you pass that down? Don't. They said to hold it kind of here, not like right up to you.
Obviously, there's a lot of text like contained within the pieces, but I was curious as to whether or not some of the text, when you leave out letters or make them a little bit less visible, if there was like some sort of reasoning behind that, or if you're just trying to kind of make the viewer look for it.
You mean within the actual painting when they're less visible?
Yes.
I I usually use, when it's inside of a painting, if it's there, yeah, I want the viewer to sort of look for it, but it's really just a jumping off point for me to make a new texture for the image. I mean, if it's completely legible in the end, really doesn't matter to me at all. It's just this is personal information, like that. I guess it's a way for things not to be arbitrary for me. Like, okay, I know this text was generated by me, so it must be right. So I can use it in whatever way that I need to within this work. And if it happens to transform in the painting or become, I guess, less text-like, then that's okay, because ultimately it's they're just forms for me to collage in and deal with once they're in front of me. So yeah, it's, if I want the viewer to read the text, usually there's something in this gallery that maybe it's written out or typed out or something like that. But I think when it comes to the paintings, it's more about making a painting, and things, all rules are gone then.
Obviously, there's a lot of wit and humor in your paintings, and it looks like you have a lot of fun. But do you want, or do you intend the viewer to interpret what you're doing on a different level, like kind of a more symbolic level?
Yeah, there's, I think, inherent with in each work and within the project as a whole, I think I want them to function on several different levels, like, you know, where humor starts to become something really dangerous, or where something that you think is obvious, there may be something under the surface of it. So I want everything to be layered in such a way that the image is never just the image. It's always something else. So in that regard, yeah, it's symbolic, but I try to stay away from them being political or symbolic of a specific kind of allegory. No, I just want there to be like a universal sort of way to approach each image. In that way, you don't need the text to support them. It's almost two different projects happening. There's the idea of writing all these goofy stories out as a springboard to get to painting, but they're not actually created separate from each other. Like, I'll make a painting and then discover something within the painting that makes me have to go back and amend the text. And then, of course, some of the paintings are more closely illustrations of something that's from the text. So there's always this give and take, and you're not quite sure where one begins or one ends. But yeah, I guess I'm creating my own symbology in the end. I'm taking things that are familiar and maybe trying to get to the essence of them. And I don't know. I think of Philip Guston a lot, actually, and the way he approached that.
Obviously, I was just wondering, you seem to have really built up this huge amount of work from this sort of one idea and built upon it with these stories and created, and it's been this, the seed that's given to all this other work. But do you ever find yourself feeling restricted or feeling like you need to make the work conform to the previous work? Like, is that a problem for you at all, or is it simply just always a jumping off point to further things?
Well, the narrative that I created essentially is a grid, and in a way it's only there for me to establish some boundaries within the studio. There's all these different things that I want to pursue, you know, like this idea of painting, performance, and whatever. And I keep tons of sketchbooks and have tons of notes about ideas that may not necessarily have to deal with St. Sessom or Mounds or any of that stuff. But I think what happens is I'll take those ideas and not necessarily conform them to fit with one of the characters. I'll just invent a new character, you know. There'll be the other Trenton Doyle Hancock that, I don't know, plays drums or does some weird musical performance. So that's sort of the fun of trying to fit everything I want to do into this thing. Like, that creates sort of a challenge and I don't know, a healthy schizophrenia, or something like that.
Thanks. This is a question spinning off of the two questions before. My experience of your work and seeing the presentation is very much one of being consumed by it, and I'm sensing in your comment about there not being it not being allegorical, that this kind of invitation to become part of this world is part of what the work is about. And I'm curious about whether or not there's points in the work or points in the process where I, as a viewer, should be looking outwards. And particularly since you just mentioned Guston, in Guston's work, there's generally something that indicates when you're in the world that he's creating and then when you should sort of bounce outside of that world. And I'm wondering if there is a similar mechanism or desire in your work.
It's all, there is actually, but I only think that it's through when images become loaded, or also in making the connection between a certain kind of story and then a story that already exists. Like, there's certain biblical stories that parallel to what I do, and most of that is after the fact. I'll look and say, oh, I just basically created the story of Noah or something like that. But in terms of, I keep it. I like to keep things, I guess, less tied to current politics, because, I guess I just do. I don't know why. Yeah, I don't want to deal with Iraq in the paintings or something like that. And that's not what you're asking, but yeah, you just tapped into something that I do think about in the studio quite a bit. It's like, how insular is this project? What is the range of the audience? Like, who am I actually speaking to, and what is their entry point into what I'm doing? And I guess I would like to believe that you can enter the work and it not be totally about escapism and not be connected or disconnected from trends, or not trends, but I guess universal maxims, or these matrices that are overlaid with history and our lives. Like, there's life and death and war, and the way civilizations are built up, and inevitably conflict happens and they have to crumble at some point, and that the power is always distributed. The power is always there in the world, but it's just distributed in different ways. Like, those kinds of ideas interest me, but not specifically like, oh, I want to talk about, the this revolution, like, I don't know. So it's not tied to a specific history, but I think my stories sort of relive history because that's in us, and that's the only way we know how to get from point A to point B is to, it's the same as people have done it like forever. So I guess those universal kinds of things is what's the work is about. I think when I was an undergrad, I was doing a lot of work based on blackness or this idea of identity politics, and I was trying to figure out my place in that. And I think in the end I realized, well, I'm black, I know that, I'm comfortable with that, it's cool, I don't need to make paintings about it. So I just wanted to make goofy pictures that made me laugh and kind of scared me too. So this idea of humor and fear being closely related is ingrained in the work. So I think, yeah, that's what I want to continue to explore, where things get funny and then kind of get uncomfortable too. I don't know if I answered any. Okay.
Kind of on the note of what you were just talking about with making things uncomfortable, the entire time when I was looking at your paintings and drawings, I couldn't help but think that it was such a racial like comment, as well as like commentary, as well as a masculine and feminine commentary, just because there was color, quote unquote, the rainbow, and the masturbating, making all these like mounds that were black and white tits. And is that not intentional, or is that just part of your intuition coming out in the drawing, or do you even see it like that?
I mean, yeah, I do see it like that. The idea of these mounds as tits. I always describe the mounds as an extension of the earth, Mother Earth, tits on the earth. That's so. No, you're in the ballpark. But no, those aren't things that I sit and draw a one-to-one relationship to. But I am aware that, when you see certain shapes or certain forms, there's connotations behind them, and I try not to overthink them when they come into the work. But what I do get excited about is like when the idea of Torpedo Boy and the vegans switching roles, like one's evil, one's the good guy, and exploring that potential within us, but also exploring the the feminine side or whatever of what I do. There's this, what's stereotypically masculine and then stereotypically feminine, something that's brutish and then something that's delicate. I like to have these things in the work that play off of each other. So yeah, I do, I guess, deal with those things, but yeah, half the times it's intuitive, and then the other half it's me consciously imposing this thing. So it's hard to pinpoint which one is which sometimes.
For your shows, do you give a background for the narratives? So when your viewers are walking into the show, they know some of the backstory?
With the most recent shows, a lot of times there's text that's written on the wall to form sort of a context, but it's more of an idea of, I guess, concrete poetry, because the paintings will cover up some of that text, and but I like for each painting to have a life of its own outside of the context of the other paintings and actually outside of the text. So I try to invest enough, I don't know, I look at each painting as its own autonomous universe, and within that a story is being told that I could actually never articulate in text anyway. So it's this idea that the paintings have to be experienced. What I just showed you is sort of half of the story, because I even forget when I go and visit these paintings and see them. I'm like, oh, I forgot that, this canvas was glued over this right here to actually create that form, or instead of this being one form, it's, about 15 pieces that are going together to make it. Or you can see the rift or the split where two paintings have come together to make one. All of that is really important to the reading of the work, and those are things that it'd be silly for me to try to put into text. So I'd say no, it's not necessary for you to know about vegans or Torpedo Boy or really any of that. It's about coming to the work and letting the paintings speak. But then you might say, then why are you writing on the wall anyway? Well, it's about creating sort of this new space. I've never seen it before, therefore I want to see it, so I have to do it. I don't know, maybe in 5 years I won't be doing that anymore. It'll have run its course, but I don't want to get to that point and say, what if I wrote on the walls? And I'm 80 years old, and I can't climb those ladders anymore and do it. So, I don't know. Things get clearer as I get older.
I had a question about materials mostly. Do you paint on canvas, right? With oil or acrylic? And is there a reason why, or is there a particular reason why a lot of the paintings are not stretched? Do the paintings change size as you're working on them, directionality? Do you crop them? Sort of material-like.
Okay, canvas. I do use a lot of canvas. I'd say 7 or 8 years ago, I was only working on paper, so it was easy for me to get strips of paper and paint on them and then glue them together, and the paintings would change size. They're very variable and flexible in what they could be, and that was really exciting to me. So at some point, I wanted to, I guess, try and find a separation between what was drawing in my studio and what painting was. So I figured, well, a heavier material, a more traditional, even a traditional material, canvas, and I can use it the exact same way as I use paper and have that exact same freedom, except it's starting to speak to a different history. At some point along the way, I transferred that paper energy over to canvas, thus creating the sort of free-form pieces that you speak of, which are tacked directly to the wall. In the last couple of years, I haven't been doing that as much, and those free-form pieces have been relegated to these special projects, sort of like that room that I made of the paintings hanging. That had a very different energy to the stretched canvases that are very, proper and square and traditional pieces that were hung on the wall. So I'm just trying to find in my project create a vocabulary or a dictionary of images that I can use. And when I do this, this equals this, and it's just like this image bank that I can refer to. So I know what happens when I treat paper a certain way. I know what happens when I treat canvas this way, and it's not stretched. It gives a different kind of weight. When it's on canvas, and hung on a white wall, it's a different kind of weight. When it's on canvas and hung on a wall with text behind it, it's a different kind of thing. So right now I feel like I'm at a stage of just testing out all this stuff and trying to, and then reconfigure it all as well. What happens when paper meets canvas, meets something on the, a found object, or I don't know, it's like sort of endless. No oil, acrylic.
Anyone else? Yes.
I'm curious about mounds and whether they're actual animals or plants, or a hybrid having come from a monkey person and a flower, and therefore is their meat some sort of hybrid of these?
They are a hybrid of those two worlds. I guess the mound for me is they're neither good nor bad. They just are. So they represent, like I said, the earth and us, but then our sustenance. They're pretty much everything wrapped into this one being. They're sort of dumb. He just sits there and thinks about colors and hangs out. And he's the stable thing, and all the wars and things happen around this stable thing, and eventually those forces destroy this stable thing. So eventually there won't be any more mounds, and I don't know what'll happen at that point, but that's sort of what they are. They're like the earth. Yeah.
Okay, I think that's it's 7:30, so why don't we go upstairs and again thank Trenton for us.